so I don't have to have a filter. Well, yeah, I didn't know that this was going to be as formal as it is with the camera and everything, so I didn't prepare anything formal. I do have a full-blown presentation on Hispanic missions for our area, so maybe I'll just talk a little bit about what we've been up to, some of our struggles, difficulties, so you guys know what to pray for, and then also just open it up for questions. So max 7-8 minutes, pretty short. So basically, as you guys know, I've been called to the area to do Hispanic missions for the whole area. Sometimes people still have in their mind that I'm just with Hope Lutheran, but that's not the case. I'm called through Hope, but really for the whole region. So keep that in mind. We're always thinking of how to be expanding and starting new things. And so if you think in your communities, if you think there would be a need for ESL courses or a citizenship class, if there is just maybe 1 or 2 Hispanic neighbors that you've met and you kind of need somebody who can speak Spanish to be connecting with them, anything like that, let me know, and I'm happy to do that for you guys. I'm for the whole region. So let's see where to begin. The main thing whenever you're starting a new church, this is all new to me, this whole church planting thing, and so it's been very hard, a huge learning curve. And one of the hardest things is how to be making new connections with people, and then how to foster those relationships. And because our Hispanic missions are being supported by 2 districts, there's always, that, okay, well, we need your monthly report, and we need to know, like, how much growth is happening, and of course that's hard because, as you know, well, that's not something that's really in our pay grade in terms of bringing people to faith. So it's hard, and a lot of times, I would say 8 out of the 10 connections that I make never go anywhere. So it's really, really challenging, and it requires a lot more patience than I have by nature. So I've been praying for myself there, that God would give me patience and just perseverance continuing along. In order to make new connections, we've got things that the Hispanic community needs with our English courses, our citizenship classes. This last year, right before the pandemic, there was a local organization that asked me to be a kind of a contact point person for Hispanics that are calling and needing help. So that's been a really big blessing because I get not as many calls now that things have slowed down a bit, but for a while I was getting about 3 to 4 calls a day, and I would help the Hispanic family fill out an application that I would later send in so they could get some financial aid, because usually people have lost their jobs or they're behind on bills because of coronavirus stuff or whatever. So that was really helpful, and that allowed me to kind of follow up with them and say, how are you doing spiritually? Is there anything I can be helping with there? And in many cases that has led to some studies. So I would say the thing that's going best right now is I've got a lot of studies in people's homes. So between 7 and 8 studies a week with 9 kids and then about 3 or 4 adults. Just started a new one. And meeting with them in their home for about an hour, although Hispanics like to talk a lot, and so it usually ends up being about 2 hours unless I've got another appointment after. And building a lot of relationships, trying to dig into the Word with them. In many cases, I'm teaching them just the Bible stories. I'm going through that 120 Bible Stories publication by CPH that's also in Spanish. So that's been really helpful to just give them the foundation. And then in a couple cases that are a little bit more advanced, I'm doing the catechism with them as well. A lot of these people, they still feel very strongly rooted in their Catholic background, and so I have no idea if they're even going to be willing to become Lutherans, but the way that I'm looking at it right now, to keep myself sane, is just to say, hey, I'm exposing them to the pure gospel. And if the Spirit drives them into the Lutheran Church, praise be to God. But if not, at least they're hearing the gospel. Because a lot of them still have this mentality of like, well, Pastor, I'm Catholic, you know that, right? And I say, that's fine right now. My main priority is that you know Jesus better and you know His Word. So that's a challenge. But the visits in the homes are going really, really well. The ongoing challenge that has been probably most frustrating to me, aside from most connections never going anywhere, would be people have such a fear for some reason. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of this, of getting connected to the community of faith in the church. So after a year and a half making, I don't know, probably 40 substantial connections with different families, none of them have come to the church regularly. Many times they visit once, never see them again. And so that's been really hard to understand. Yeah.
Are they going to the Catholic Church though?
No. A lot of times they say they are, but then I ask, well, how often do you go? Are you a regular member? Oh no, like maybe once every couple of years, or maybe on Easter. So, one thing I'm running into for the first time when I was in the Dominican, it was the contrary. People were very open to meeting me at the church, but sometimes fearful for me to come into their home. Here, with mainly Mexican culture that I'm dealing with, they seem very open to having me in the home. like right away, without any trust being built up at all. They're like, yeah, come on over, let's talk and study and get to know each other. But then I can never seem to get them to come to the congregation.
And do you mean the Spanish-speaking
Spanish-speaking
service?
service on Sunday night.
Yeah.
So that group that meets regularly on Sunday continues to be really small. You know, on a good night, 7. On a bad night, 2. So as you can imagine, you know, that's discouraging at times. You know, when you put a lot of work into preparing everything in Spanish and 2 people show up.
Would it be better if it was Sunday morning?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think Henry had tried to do it Sunday morning before, and most people work on Sunday mornings. But now I'm finding that a lot of people work on Sunday all day, so it's like it's really hard to juggle their schedules. Most of the Hispanic families I'm dealing with have 1 day off a week, and the rest of the days they're working extraordinarily long hours at Tyson, and really hard, and they have 1 day a week to rest and to do their laundry and clean house, and so it's an understandable struggle. But you know, my question is, how do I get them to have regular contact with the Word? And you know, lately I've kind of been feeling like, okay, well, if we want to meet up in little homes and have groups there, fine, so be it. But they seem to be so hesitant to connecting with a community of faith, whether that's a small community or not. And that's something I'm not quite sure why yet. So, kind of investigating that question. There's a couple people that are very blunt and very honest with me that I appreciate a lot. So I'm going to kind of talk to them and try to get to the bottom of what is the fear there, what's the obstacle. So that's probably the biggest difficulty right now. The other big thing, of course, during COVID is that finances have been really rough. So even though we're supported by 2 districts, Iowa West and Nebraska, I was recently said that they have enough to pay me for 1 more month. And it's like, well, well, hopefully that will work out, but it's a big struggle. And a lot of our regular donors have stopped giving totally during COVID. So that would be something to keep in mind for you all if your churches are in the process of setting budgets, or if you would like to just do a little missions project to keep our Hispanic work in mind. Like I know Josh, I'll be coming to your place on the 11th of October to preach for Josh's congregation and to do a little Hispanic presentation. I'm happy to come and visit you and just introduce myself, or to preach, to do the whole service, to just do the Bible study, whatever you need. I know that some guys kind of prefer one thing or the other, and I'm totally open to anything. My main goal is just to get the awareness up so people know that there's Hispanic outreach in our area going on, and I'm here to help. So that's kind of the main goal there. So yeah, if you can keep us in your prayers, particularly with the finances, but then also the helping people connect to these Hispanic families that have got a lot of good trust built up with them. A lot of them have said things to me like, I haven't stepped foot in a church for many years, and I've certainly never picked up a Bible. And now, you know, they say things like, God's put you in my life to help me with this. And I feel like the sincerity is there, but for some reason there's still that fear of getting connected to a community of faith. That continues to be a big challenge. And a lot of them have no idea what Lutheranism is, so it's all new. Sometimes that works in my favor, other times it doesn't, because there's not a bunch of prejudgments about it. But then they're also confused about why we're so into civil rights with Martin Luther King. And I have to explain that, different Martin Luther. I mean, we are passionate about that too, but not quite the same guy. So there's a lot of confusion there, and in some ways that's nice, because I'm kind of coming in with a blank slate. I get to just help form them from the beginning without a bunch of prejudices against the Lutheran Church. So that's really good. Yeah, that's kind of what's going on right now. Any questions? Maybe I'll just open it up to any questions you have at all about
if a congregation wanted to support you financially, do we do it through Iowa District West? Do we do it through Mission Central? What's your...
I would say the easiest is just, you can send it right to Hope Lutheran Church and then just put a little memo Hispanic ministry on it.
Okay, just directly to Hope Lutheran?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And you can, Mission Central's helping us a bit too. You can send it through them, but I think that just extra steps might get more confusing. So the easiest thing would just be right to Hope Lutheran, put a memo Hispanic ministry on it. Yep. And that's the easiest way, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
Is Mike's hair still pink?
It is still. I was kind of hoping he would be here today because he's had that, the crazy mohawk for a month, 4 weeks, and now he's got the monk's hairdo. So it's totally shaved in the middle with a ring of red hair around the edge. So extra attractive, and he's got way more guts than I do. But that was for a fundraising project for our Hispanic Missions, and the deal was if we raise $5,000 or more, then Mike has to have all of these crazy hairdos for over a month. So that's kind of why he is suffering, all for the sake of the good cause. So I thank him for being braver than I am.
Yeah. So do you have online worship in
in Spanish?
Right now we don't, and Henry and I, the only online kind of presence we've got is really with this thing called WhatsApp. I don't know if you guys have ever used WhatsApp. It's basically just a messaging service that's really good for group messages. Most of the Hispanics are very familiar with that, but many of them don't have internet sometimes, and so they might just have a phone that they're paying data for. So we've wrestled with that. Is it worth the effort? Is it going to reach more people that way or not? Still kind of wrestling with that issue. But right now it's just the WhatsApp group. So that's another thing. If you guys know somebody that might want to be included in that WhatsApp group, it's as easy as me as plugging in their number, adds them right to it, and then we send out daily devotions for them in Spanish. So Henry's been doing a lot of videos. I do kind of audio messages, reading from a little devotional book by CPAs. It's really good. So yeah, that's kind of all we've got online right now. Anything else?
What does ESO look like right now? You still?
Yeah, so we're starting on Monday, this coming Monday, and we don't know what to expect. We've got the teachers lined up, but we have no idea if the group's going to be extra small. We're assuming it's going to be extra small, but typically when we start out, it's about 40, and then it kind of dwindles as people realize that, well, learning another language is really time-consuming and hard. And so most of the time it ends up going down substantially to kind of the people that are most dedicated to it. But yeah, we don't know what to expect this year with COVID stuff. So we'll see on Monday.
How has the Hispanic community reacted towards COVID? Have they been very fearful, or have they been just kind of like, yeah, we'll just do it? And...
Yeah, my general thought, the thing that I hear most often, even though there's always exceptions and the whole spectrum, most often I hear, cuando me toca, and that just means like when it hits me, it hits me. There's nothing I can possibly do about it, you know, that kind of mentality. And yeah, so we've got one lady who is just totally convinced that the whole thing's false, and she's particularly vulnerable because she's been going through cancer therapy, you know, with chemo, and so I'm trying to kind of help her find that middle ground of like, okay, there are some exaggerations out there, but there's also a risk, so try to be a little more careful, because I worry about her. She's a single mom taking care of 2 kids, and so. Oh, wow. But there are some that are really, really worried about it, and then others don't seem to think anything about it at all. There was a big wave that came through the Hispanic community because of the Tyson factory. There was a big outbreak, and since then things have gone down substantially, and I haven't heard of anybody right now in the Hispanic community that has it, but I'm also, you know, exposed to a limited sector of that community, so I'm not quite sure. Yeah. Other questions about the Hispanic culture, about ministry?
Well, just a comment. It's very, very real, and I didn't realize until we had the Sudanese worshiping at Redeemer that they work 6 days more than not. And from 5:30, need to be at work at 5:30 and don't get off until 5:30, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Saturdays more often than not, and then sometimes even Sunday. And so when do they have time to go to the laundromat and do the clothes for 4 or 5 people and on and grocery shop? And
yeah, it's really
it is true with the meat packing, Tyson and Seaboard Triumph. Mm-hmm. And I think with COVID and with certain situations, certain places being closed and then opened and closed, you know, because of the COVID, it was even more stressful.
Yeah, definitely.
So
lots of long hours.
It is. I don't know when to get anything done. You know, tires, oil changed.
Yeah, all of the stuff. Yeah. One thing that, you know, that might be interesting to you that I've kind of picked up a lot, especially in this last year, getting to know people on more of a personal level. One thing that's really rampant in our Hispanic community is just a feeling of loneliness. This is something that is really, it kind of breaks my heart when I talk to some of these people, and you know, they come here with the American dream. They really want a better future for their kids, and financially that's true, that's happening, and their kids are raised, and they know the English perfectly, and they're going to have more opportunities for sure. But people are just very lonely here. You know, they work a ton, and so they have like one day to socialize, and then they don't know many people. Sometimes there's conflict in their families because of a bunch of broken family issues with divorce and adultery, and you know, lots of stuff like that. And so there's a lot of people that I'm talking to that I just feel that would be the word to describe them, as just very disconnected and very lonely. And I don't know if any of you have lived abroad, but that's something that is really strong when you're living in another culture, when you're always the other. And so one thing I try to encourage people when I'm out presenting on Hispanic ministries, even if you don't know Spanish, just like, you know, the simple stuff of like smiling and asking how are you, or if you can learn one little phrase, ¿Cómo estás? The fact that you're even making an effort at all to reach out to the other, it really means a lot more to them than it would to, you know, mean for me to ask you how you're doing. Because they're feeling like the excluded one all the time. And so I really run into that a lot of just loneliness and feeling totally disconnected and very a lot of kind of sentimentalism about the past day, the good old days in Mexico, and life was so much easier, you know. And so people feeling very kind of stuck between two worlds, and not feeling American enough, and not feeling Mexican enough, and it's really hard. Just those are some of the unique struggles that come with that community. So, yeah, that's something to think of when you're interacting and seeing people that are from the Hispanic community.
Are you running into a lot of citizenship issues, or has that been very, from what I've heard before, is it's a rough transition to become an American citizen from being from Mexico?
Yeah, you know, this is something that a lot of us that don't have to deal with these immigration issues, it's really easy. And this is the mentality I had before too, is if you want to become a legal citizen, we've got the legal pathway to do it. Just wait in line, do your duty, you know, and just become a citizen. And it's just way, way more complicated than I had ever imagined. And for some people, it's like, okay, yeah, sure, you can go through the proper process, but it's going to take approximately 50 years for you to ever become a legal citizen. So then it's like, okay, well, do we sit here and wait for 50 years while, you know, this happens, or do we go across legally? Or, you know, there's a lot of problems that make the whole issue much more complicated than we imagine it to be sometimes. Right now, I'm dealing with a family that was fleeing because their daughter was, well, one thing that happens a lot is as they're close to the border, then people in the border area, there's a lot of corruption and drugs, and they know that these people are vulnerable because, well, they don't know anybody there, and they're desperate to get across. And so they hire these coyotes who end up being really corrupt many times, and they sometimes kidnap their kids, sell them into sex slavery. I'm dealing with one family right now who the guy said, yeah, we'll help you, we've got everything official lined up, and it's going to cost $10,000. And then they get over here, and then now the guy says, it's $25,000, and if you don't pay this much every month, we're going to kill your family back in Guatemala. And it's like, well, what do you do then? Like, there's no recourse for them because they don't have any support from the law, and there's no official documentation, and even if there were, it probably wouldn't matter. Mm-hmm. So they're just very vulnerable to this sort of like abuse, you know. So there's a lot of just brokenness and fear and loneliness, and it's a really rough situation for a lot of our Hispanic communities. And the more stories I hear, the more I'm just like, man, this is such a foreign reality to me that I've grown up with security and safety, you know, being here as an American citizen. And it's really rough for a lot of them. So, yeah. Other questions?
So I know, like in Des Moines, they have an actual good Hispanic community where they actually come together as a community. Is that not the case in South Sioux, where they have festivals and stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, they do. That's something that I'm still kind of learning as I break into the community and people start inviting me to the things. But they do. They, like, for example, this last year they had a multi-ethnic, or maybe that wasn't the title. I can't remember what they called it. It was a big parade for different Hispanic cultures and different immigrant cultures. And that was a pretty big event. This year, I'm assuming everything was passed and gone now because of COVID. But there are community things there, and there's more that I'm aware of at the moment, so that's a good question that I need to investigate a bit more. So what sort of things are they doing together as a community to feel connected?
Well, that might be something that you guys at Hope could actually foster, is just say, we don't care about the churchy stuff. Let's build community. Mm-hmm. Start off there.
Yeah, helping to facilitate that process of feeling more connected and rooted down. Yeah, that's a good idea. I think of some ways to do that.
Because I know that's worked with Lincoln for couple of events at least.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and then Lincoln, over in Lincoln, who is somebody doing?
Well, not Lincoln in the town, Lincoln in Des Moines.
Yeah, Lincoln. What's his last name?
Guerrero.
Yeah, Guerrero. That's right. So, yeah. Typically, we have a yearly meeting with a couple congregations, including Lincoln's and Okoboji, but I can't really get. So, yeah, that's a good point, though, to be looking into that. Any other questions or thoughts?